in Antonom Komatom. Sicer je bilo večkrat rekel po svoje, ker je vsak imel precej dolge govore, ker je imel za veliko zapovedati, tako da smo bili deležni kar precej poglobljenih obrazložitev. Govor je bilo predvsem o tem, da prekomerno onesnažujemo okolje in da so trendi, da grejo v nasprotno smer od zaželjenega in pač tudi vsebina, kaj je problem, je bilo izpostavljeno. Pa da tudi nekako smo nakazali, da vendar je treba širiti informacije, izobraževati ljudi in dejansko pripeljati družbo do tega, da se bo ozavedala, ozavestila, da je kvaliteta našega življenja odvisna od nas, skupaj vse, torej, da se moramo bolj povezovati. Poudarek je bil v glavnem na onesnaževanju narave, pa tudi govore bilo delno o cepivih, o naravni medicini, njegovem pristopu, ki ga ima, pa predvsem o vzgajanju oziroma pridelovanju sadja in zelenjave na naraven način. No, danes smo bili na terenu v Kranju, šli smo si ogledati vrtiček, ki so ga društva Svetlin in društvo za, kako je že vlasta? Sorsko polje, ja. Tako, ki so ga umestili v okolje, kjer so dejansko sami konvencionalni kmetje. Tako da smo imeli zraven traktorje, ki so brneli in tako naprej. Imeli smo en tak lušen pogovor s člani, naredili smo tudi nekaj planov za drugo leto oziroma za naprej. Ogledali smo si vrt, pomenili smo se o načinih priprave grede in obdelave in tako naprej. Je bilo kar nekaj konkretnih nasvetov v strani Johna, pa izmenjali smo si pač svoje izkušnje. No, danes pa nadaljujemo z predavanjem o naravnem zdravju. John ima navado izpostaviti dejstvo, da ne potrebujemo zdravil. Če nekdo pride k njemu, mu pač razloži, da gre tu za naravni proces zdravljenja, da bolezni pravzaprav ne obstajajo. Obstaja zdravje in to je treba ohranjati. In to je odvisno od nas, ne od nekoga drugega. Mi smo bili navajeni na to, da nam sugerirajo vsi drugi, kaj je zdravje, kako ga doseči, kaj moramo narediti. In ko zbolimo, da gremo seveda k zdravniku. No, danes bomo pa govorili o tem, kaj dejansko je zdravje, kaj so bolezni in kako lahko se lotimo težav, ki jih imamo. Tako da predajam besedo Johnu. John, you can sit here, have a water and a mouse. Or mouse and water. Okay.
I see we have a few new faces. Thank you all for coming.
Vidim, da imamo danes nove obraze, da čisto hvala, da ste prišli.
Na nas, John.
Se pravi, zahvaljuje se, da ste prišli, pa vse ve, da vidi nove obraze.
It's nice to be here with you.
Zelo lepo je biti tukaj z vami.
To start with tonight, I'd like to speak to you about something which is very, very natural.
Okay, danes bomo začeli s tem, da bomo pomislili nekaj, kar je zelo, zelo naravno.
And this is the fast.
In to je postenje.
You find that all animals in their natural state
Ugotovite lahko, da vse živali v njihovem naravnem stanju,
when they become ill,
kada zbolijo,
immediately find a cool, dry spot where there is water,
takoj poiščejo prostor, ki je suh, potem varjen, kjer je voda, kjer je mir,
and lie there
in tam ležijo,
until they either recover
dokler se bodisi ne pozdravijo oziroma okrevajo,
or in the odd case die.
ali pač v zelo redkem primeru umrejo.
Most recover. of course.
Večina jih seveda okreva.
Can I interrupt for a moment for one question to Fabi? A razumete vsi angliško?
Ja.
Ne? Dragi so prevod? Ja, tako da vemo, ker če bi vsi razumeli, potem bi lahko prišli direktno. Ok, we need translation.
So, we have lost the ability to do this because we've been educated into the fact that if you don't eat for 3 days, you're going to die.
Mi smo izgubili sposobnost tega početja, zato ker so nas učili, da pač ne boste jedli 3 dni, boste umrli.
And just to share with you right from the beginning, something which I wouldn't duplicate,
No, začetek bom nekaj delil z vami, čez kar ne rad ponavljam.
but something which was very successful at the time.
Kar je bilo pač v nekem času zelo uspešno.
I had a lady present at the farm
Torej na moji farmi je bila prisotna ena gospa,
who was extremely overweight.
ki je bila ekstremno predebela oziroma imela težave s tem.
She had elephantitis.
Imela je elefantitis, se pravi slonja nekako.
That means her legs were like this.
Torej njene noge so bile takšne kot slonja.
She fasted for 120 days.
Postila se je 120 dni.
She was a woman who, no taller than I am.
Ni bila nič višja od mene.
When she finished, she was, I have to look this out, 6 stone 7 pound. 6 stone 7 pound, which is 60, 6, 40, 20, 44, 91 pounds. She was 91 pounds.
91 pounds. Torej 91 funtov je bila težka. To je...
She was around 40 years of age at the time.
Njena starost takrat je bila približno 40 let.
She died in the recent years at 87 years of age.
Nedavno je umrla v starosti 87 let.
That's just to illustrate the fact that you won't die after 3 days.
To je zgolj za ilustracijo, da ne boste umrli po 3 dneh vstenja.
Because when people die after 3 days,
Zato, ker kadar ljudje umrejo po 3 dneh,
it's because of the fear.
je to ponovadi zaradi strahu.
They believe it,
Verjamejo.
so don't believe it.
Torej ne verjamete.
And realize we must define what we're talking about when we're fasting.
In zavedate se, da moramo definirati, o čem sploh se pogovarjamo, kadar govorimo o postenju.
Many people will talk about juice fasting or some other form.
Mnogi ljudje bodo govorili o postenju s sokovi.
This, in our book, is not fasting.
V moji knjigi se to ne smatra kot postenje.
It's feasting.
To je praznovanje oziroma hranjenje.
You're still having to digest the food that you're putting into yourself.
Kajti vaše telo mora še vedno prebaviti hrano, ki jo dajete v telo.
And once you've experienced the two,
Kadar pač izkusite oba načina,
the difference between the two,
je razlika med obema načinoma,
you will know that to fast, as we would define it, on water only,
je potem vidite, da je pač takšno postenje, kot ga bomo mi opisovali, se pravi postenje zgolj z pitjem vode,
is totally different
povsem drugačno.
from just drinking juice or teas or soups or whatever.
Od tega, da bi potem pili recimo bolj sokove ali pa juhe ali pa katerekoli druge napitke.
Because, as I said before, all these other things require digestion.
Ker kot sem že omenil, vse te ostale stvari zahtevajo pač delovanje prebave.
And some of the hardest work you'll ever do in your life
In eno izmed najtežjih del, ki jih boste opravili v življenju,
is the digestion of food.
je ravno prebavljanje hrane.
And one of the things that you're looking for in healing,
In ena izmed stvari, ki jo iščete pri zdravljenju,
and that's why we fast,
in zaradi tega se namreč postimo,
is the conservation of energy.
je ohranjanje oziroma čuvanje energije.
The fast should be a psychological,
Postenje bi moralo biti psihološko,
physiological,
fiziološko
and physical
in fizično
rest.
počivanje.
Because when we do that, in that way, we release the maximum amount of energy that is available for healing.
Ker v tem primeru se sprosti maksimalna količina energije, ki je potem na razpolago za zdravljenje.
And in my experience, that when we fast, as I've defined it, we will experience healing that won't go on at any other time in life.
In po mojih izkušnjah bomo v tem primeru, kadar se postimo, izkusili zdravljenje, ki se ne more zgoditi v nobenem drugem primeru.
And during this healing,
In med tem zdravljenjem
quite often, we will experience pain like we've never experienced in our life.
bomo izkusili takšno bolečino, kot jo nismo še nikoli prej izkusili.
This is not the superficial pain like you cutting your finger.
To ni neka umetna bolečina, ki se recimo zgodi, kadar se vrežete v prst.
This is a deep, throbbing pain within you.
To je globoko čuteča bolečina znotraj vas.
And it can be so severe
In lahko je tako močna,
that I have had to teach people
da moram učiti ljudi,
how to get within the pain
kako pač se soočiti s to bolečino
and flow with it.
in plavati z njo oziroma sprejeti, nekako se znati.
To illustrate, in one instance, I was presented with a situation
No, da vam pokažem, v enem primeru sem bil soočen z naslednjo situacijo,
where the muscles, ligaments and tendons of the shoulder had all been damaged.
Tkiva oziroma vezi na rami mišice so bile vse poškodovane.
And in actual fact, the arm tended to wither.
Roka je umirala, sušila se.
And at one, right from the beginning almost, the person was in so much pain that the only way they got any relief was sitting against the wall, holding their arm like this. But this didn't relieve the pain completely.
Ta oseba se je potem soočala z blaženjem bolečine na ta način, da je sedela ob zidu in je v bistvu si podprla roko tako, ampak to pač ni oblažilo popolnoma bolečine.
They couldn't lie down.
Ta oseba se ni zmogla vleči na tla,
It was too painful to do so.
ker je bilo to preveč boleče.
This man learnt to flow with the pain, to get within it and flow with it.
Ta oseba se, oziroma ta možakar se je naučil potem soočati z bolečino, pa pač sprejeti in prenašati. Ne?
And he was then able to sleep for 1 hour
Potem je bil končno sposoben, da je lahko 1 uro zaspal.
and spend the next hour getting within the pain again.
In naslednjo uro je potem spet preživel tako, da se je spet soočal oziroma šel v to bolečino.
And he did this for 24/7.
In to je počel v bistvu 24 ur, 7 dni na teden.
24 hours a day for 7 days. On the 8th day,
Na 87. dan
he woke up
Na 8. dan.
8. dan.
Što mi je 7.
Ok, ok, 7. 8. dan se je zgodil.
His arm was completely healed.
Njegova roka je bila popolnoma pozdravljena.
So, these are the things you can expect when you fast on water. You will not, I've never seen this happen where people are drinking juice. It's always fairly superficial when they're drinking juice. So,
Torej, takšne stvari,
let's see if I can get this to work properly.
torej, takšne stvari lahko pričakujete v primeru postenja, v tem smislu, ko bo predstavljeno. Nikoli še nisem videl teh stvari v primeru postenja z sokovi, ne, ki so bolj umetne, oziroma se ne dajo primere.
Well, as I said, all animals do it, and unfortunately the human has forgotten how to do it. He has to learn to become intuitive or instinctive again. So, fasting. Fasting is not starvation. There are two different phases. Fasting is that period where there are adequate reserves by way of excess tissue, accumulated fat, to sustain life without the necessity of drawing upon essential organs. That's very important. Do not be drawing upon essential organs while you're fasting. But, yes, go on.
Okay. Torej, postenje ni stradanje, to je treba ločiti, ker pri postenju se uporabljajo pač primerne rezerve v telesu, oziroma presežki, ki se nahajajo v tkivih in akumulirani maščobi, s pomočjo katerih se pač lahko zdržuje tudi življenje organizma, brez da bi se pač izčrpalo te ključne organe.
And it's not until all the reserves have been consumed that starvation starts. But I should actually change that a little by saying it's not until all of the energy reserves, because sometimes in a very bad situation where the person has really given themselves a bad life overall, they may not be able to come to that point before they run out of what we would call the vital energy. And so the body will say, it's time to stop. Now, how do you know when to stop? Well, I'm going to give you some general rules, but there are other specific rules.
Okay, se pravi, stradanje se ne začne pred trenutkom, ko ste izčrpali vse vaše telesne rezerve, ampak rad bi to mogoče spremenil v to misel, da bi pač povedal, dokler niste izčrpali vse vaše zaloge energije, kar se lahko zgodi v nekaterih primerih, ko so pač ljudje živeli tak slab življenjski stil, da so v bistvu imeli zelo nizko raven energije.
So, if you really want more specific information, you really need to go to somebody who, like myself, helps people through the fast. And I would say to anybody who doesn't have any experience, and that is in a chronic state of ill health, that they need to consult with someone to help them in their health problems. But you can get a very good idea from reading my book on fasting. The Principles and Practice of Fasting, you can download it from my website. It's as an ebook.
Torej, specifične informacije lahko dobite pri nekom, ki pač ima izkušnje z tem, da se sam postil oziroma pomagal drugim pri tem procesu. In kdorkoli še tega ni počel, je smiselno, da se posvetuje. Te informacije lahko dobite tudi v moji knjigi Principi in praksa postenja, ki jo lahko najdete na moji spletni strani in se lahko brezplačno prenesete v PDF obliki.
So, I'm sure you're quite clear now that starvation doesn't start until fasting is completed. And the main signs of stopping the fast are, one, the fear. That is the very main sign. If anybody becomes fearful, they should immediately break the fast, because the fear will kill you in itself. The second one is when your tongue clears. Now, the tongue doesn't always clear exactly as you would think it should. So this is why you need somebody to help you to understand this. The third one is the return of hunger. There's a fourth one, is when all the processes of the body, such as the pulse rate and the heart rate, and blood pressure and everything, returns to normal. But they're only general rules. You find that when you've been in this particular form of professional practice after a few years, that it's something that becomes intuitive, that you can't say that it's just those signs, it's a whole lot of other signs that you notice about the person, and you know that's the time. But a person can be, you can see a person that looks as though they are going to go on fasting for the next 20 days at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the body can be saying, it's time to break the fast. Just like that. So, you see, you need to keep monitoring all of these things. Right.
Najbolj pogoste razloge, oziroma kdaj se post prekine, prvi razlog je zaradi strahu. Rad bi povedal to, da pač upam, da zdaj razumete razliko med kestenjem in stradanjem. Pravi, da strah vas lahko tudi ubije. Drug najbolj pogost pač indikator, da se kestenje konča, je, ko se vam jezik očisti, stane čist. Tukaj vam pač, tudi fajn, če vam lahko kdo pomaga, da vam pač pove, da se vam to zgodi, ker pač lažje videti, kot vi sami. Potem tretji tak indikator je vrnitev lakote, se pravi, da postanete lačni. Na četrte pač te znake pa spada to, da se nekateri procesi v telesu vrnejo nazaj v normalni način, kot je recimo krvni pritisk se stabilizira oziroma bitje srca, pa je potem še več telesnih znakov in po mojih izkušnjah pač ta proces postane tudi precej intuitiven, se pravi, ko imaš več teh izkušenj, lahko potem z različnih znakov zaznaš ta pravi čas.
Firstly, I'd like to apologize to my good man here. I forget sometimes. So, in the fast, what is happening in the fast? This is one of the basic things that's happening in the fast, is what is known as autolysis or the autolytic action. Now, the autolytic action is the process of self-digestion, where the body is taking all of this mass that we don't need and it's breaking it down and reconstituting it and throwing off what it doesn't need. Now this process can be quite fascinating overall, because this process of autolysis doesn't only go on in fasting. It can go on during homeostasis. If you're living as you should and you're listening to your body and you're not overeating or overworking and using up energy unnecessarily, then the autolytic action can go on at times. And I'd like to share with you some of the things, or one of the things at least, that can be misleading to us, where we think everything's going wrong. You know, you can be, you might get up in the morning and you're going through the morning and you feel thirsty and you drink some water, and the next thing you start to get a headache and you feel nauseous. And you think, what's happening here? Shouldn't I have drunk the water? Is that making me nauseous? Is that giving me the headache? But what is happening is that you needed the fluid for the body to carry out the autolytic process. And until you'd had the fluid, the body couldn't do it. And so all this, the body is starting then to digest. And so this, as this digestive process is going on, and this is, you can feel like this in the fast. You can feel headache and nauseous, backache, all sorts of things, because this process is going on. And this matter, of course, is being, as I said, it's being digested again. It's going, you can feel the mucus running down the back of your throat into your stomach. And so that's what you're experiencing with the headache. You're getting, the headache is where you've got the digestion which is going on without oxygen. And normal digestion goes on with oxygen, in actual fact. They're both processes of fermentation. Only one is with oxygen and one is without oxygen. And the one that is without oxygen is the one that you experience when you're getting the headache and the nausea, and also at normal times when you're getting foul-smelling gas coming out from the mouth.
Pri prekinjanju posta, to se naša še na prejšnji sklop, je v bistvu pogosto tudi tako, da pač recimo začne sredi noči, pa se potem drugi dan prekine, zato ker pač to zahteva. Zdaj bom povedal nekaj, kaj se dogaja med postom in poskušamo razložiti, kaj je to autoliza. Autoliza je v bistvu proces samo prebave, kadar telo v bistvu razbija določene celice oziroma določene tkiva in potem samo pač to prebavi oziroma izloči iz telesa. Oziroma gre za neko notranje celično prebavo. To je zelo fascinanten proces, ki se lahko dogaja tudi pač v stanju homeostaze, se pravi telesnega ravnovesja. V primeru, se pravi, dogaja se lahko tudi, če se ne prenejedate, če ne delate preveč, oziroma ste preveč aktivni ali pa kakorkoli drugače delate ta proces. Zdaj bi pa rad bi z vami tudi naslednji primer, ki vas lahko malo zavede. V bistvu, ko se te stvari dogajajo, pač se vam lahko zgodi, da se pojavijo glavoboli, pa razne bolečine oziroma vnetja, potem mukus, sluzi, kako pa je, se pravi, sluzenje, ne? In v tem primeru pač potem je, ja, se gre za to, ali je si prisoten na njih, oziroma telo potrebuje za to autolizo tudi vodo, da lahko izvaja. Lahko se vam dogaja tudi to, da pač ta sluz čutite, da vam gre po grlu, ker se pač dogajajo določeni procesi. Ja,
I feel I should hang my head. As you can see, the tissue is lost in the inverse order of its usefulness. And you see autolysis going on in nature, in the seed, because that's what's keeping the seed alive, so that when you plant it, it will sprout. In the same way, you see it in animals when they hibernate. You know that a lot of animals hibernate during the winter time, and you see it in eggs. They're living on the tissue that's in there. And in the insects, you're seeing it in the pupae.
Torej, autolizo lahko znate v naravi v primeru semen. Se dogaja podoben proces potem pri določenih živali, ki izvajajo hibernacijo, torej spijo čez zimo, medvedi, ostale živali, ali pa recimo v primeru jajc ali pa insektov, ki se zabudijo.
During the fast, this doesn't go on just willy-nilly. It's very rigidly controlled. We're capable of digesting our own protein, fat, and carbohydrates. As mentioned, we initially draw on the less essential tissue, and we utilize the end products of this autolytic action to nourish and sustain the vital organs and the essential tissue. And we can actually autolyze when cysts, tumours, so that if a person fasts when they should fast, and there is a difference between just fasting because you think you ought to fast and fasting when your body says so, then that can occur. There are limitations, of course, with this, depending upon the amount of energy that you have and you as an individual. But to come back to the point of fasting when we should or when we think we ought to, when we fast when we think we ought to, when we think, oh, I should fast, we are applying our intellect over what our body is telling us. But when we fast when the body tells us when we become acutely ill, you know that when you become acutely ill in any way or form, you lose your hunger, don't you? You don't become, so you don't want to eat. So it's natural to start fasting. And then, if you do it that way, you will find that, to give you again an illustration of this, that if you fasted what we call elective fasting, that's going by your intellect, you might fast for 30 or 40 days or more, usually no more than about 45. And you'll achieve a certain level. But if you fast according to the biological way of listening to what your body's telling you, you would most likely only fast for 12, 15, maybe 20 days at the most, and achieve something better than you did when you elective fasted. So they're the difference in the two stages.
Pravi, vprašanje je, kdaj se postiti, in tukaj moramo podariti razliko med dvema načinoma. Eden način je, kadar pač telo sporoči, da bi bilo smiselno postiti, drugi način pa je, kadar vi mislite, da bi se morali postiti. In v tem srednjem primeru pač intelekt prevlada nad telesom. Potem, glede teh detajlov, kdaj se postiti, seveda to zavisi tudi glede na vsak specifičen primer, na osebo, na stanje energije, na sploh vse ostale dejavnike. Če pa poslušamo telo, v tem primeru govorimo o biološkem postenju, v nasprotnem primeru govorimo recimo o izbranem oziroma selektivnem postenju. In v primeru biološkega postenja, to je v primeru, kadar imamo pravka z akutno boleznijo. In če pomislite, akutna bolezen v bistvu pomeni, da v tem primeru tudi izgubite apetit.
So, coming back to the biological fast, just to give you a little bit more information on that. If a person presented to me, and they're chronically ill, because that's usually how they do anyway.
Okay, če pride k meni oseba, in najpogosteje se zgodi to, da je v bistvu ta oseba z kronično boleznijo, kar pomeni, da se ta bolezen čez čas razvija, če se že traja.
What would I do?
Kaj bi naredil?
The first thing I would do is assess their situation.
Prva stvar, ki naredi, ne, da v bistvu pač preučim njihovo situacijo.
And then I would give them a program.
To jim dam program,
which will enable the body's energy, vital energy, to be raised.
ki bo omogočal tem osebam, da bodo lahko dvignile nivo svoje telesne energije.
Because when we're chronically ill,
Tukaj, kadar smo kronično bolni,
our vital energy is very low.
je naša vitalna energija zelo nizka.
And the first thing we need to do is lift the vital energy.
In prva stvar, ki jo je potrebno narediti, je to, da dvignemo nivo naše telesne vitalne energije.
And so by following this program, they're able to lift their vital energy.
Torej, s pomočjo sledenja temu programu so sposobni dvigniti nivo svoje vitalne energije.
In young people who are relatively vital,
Pri mladih ljudeh, ki so relativno vitalni,
this might occur in 7 days.
se to zna zgoditi v 7 dneh.
In older people, less vital,
Pri starejših, manj vitalnih ljudeh,
then it's usually around 7 weeks.
običajno to traja 7 tednov.
And then in older people,
In pri res starih ljudeh,
it's an unknown factor.
v bistvu pač neznano.
It will occur when it's ready.
Se bo pač to zgodilo, kadar bo pač nastopi trenutek.
So you can see also why when we become acutely ill,
Torej, kot vidite, kadar se pravi akutna bolezen,
we should be happy,
bi morali biti srečni.
but most of us are.
Večina od nas,
I wish this hadn't happened to me,
ženske se
because this is our body healing itself.
ampak to je naše telo, nastane, ko se zdravi iz samega sebe.
And it's only our body that does the healing at any time.
In zgolj naše telo je tisto, ki opravlja zdravljenje kadarkoli.
Nothing heals, only the body.
Nič ne zdravi, samo telo.
So, next page. Right. So the fast is primarily the conservation of energy, physical, physiological, psychological rest, bed rest, non-stimulating reading, not watching TV, not playing DVDs, and so on. That's what you should be doing. In actual fact, there's a man on the west coast of the United States who says you should lie down and close your eyes and stay like that for the rest of the time. I've tried it. I can't say that I can do that. I usually end up with a whole lot of books around me. You know, you read 2 words, oh, I don't want to read anymore. You read another 2 words, oh, I don't want to. So it goes on.
Torej, kostenje je v bistvu čuvanje energije oziroma ohranjanje energije in to na 3 nivojih, fizične, fiziološke in psihološke, kar pomeni počivanje v postelji, brez televizije, brez gledanja DVD-ja, brez takih obremenjevanj. Na zahodni obali Združenih držav Amerike je nek gospod, ki pač daje potem še dodatno navodila, da je bilo najboljše ležati, zapreti oči in tako ostati. Sam sem to poskusil, pa se ni najbolje odnesel, zato sem ponovadi znanjem okrog sebe z eno kopico knjig, pač na dan čas pustil.
I'm going up, down, up, down. So, of course, there are always situations where you can't deal with them. Contraindications, we would call them. And that's the chronically ill. You should not fast when you're chronically ill, because you can die. It's as simple as that. If you're excessively thin, you have anorexia nervosis, then you shouldn't fast either. You can be thin and still fast, but not with anorexia nervosis, which is extremely overly thin. Quite often a person will say, I'm very thin, I don't think I can fast, but they quite often can fast better than the person who's overweight. The fear of the fast, habitual users of any of those drugs that I mentioned yesterday, the contraceptive pill, marijuana, cortisone and HRT.
Torej, vedno obstajajo situacije, kadar pač nekaj stvari ne morete izvajati, torej kako kontraindikacije, Torej, postiti se ne morete, oziroma ne smete, kadar ste kronično bolni, zato ker v tem primeru se lahko zgodi, da celo umrete, v bistvu tako preprosto. Potem postiti se ne bi smela osebe, ki so prekomerno, imajo probleme s prekomerno nizko težo, se pravi anoreksične osebe in tako dalje. V določenih primerih se lahko postijo osebe z nizko telesno maso, ampak na splošno pa so naredili te, ki imajo zelo prenizko. Potem tretji dejavnik je, da se ne smejo postiti tisti, ki imajo strah pred postom. Četrti primer pa je, kadar imamo opravka z 4 zdravili oziroma drogami, ki sem jih tudi včeraj omenil, to so kontracepcijske tablete, uravnovačci hormonskih.
Neka prosa, kontracepcija, kaj že ona kortizol?
Ja, potem kortizol, pa potem še v primeru, če to uživa marihuano.
So what can we expect to happen during the fast? What's going to occur in the vital of the organs and such like? Well, with the blood diminishes in volume in proportion to the diminishment of the size of the body. The quality is not impaired. Rejuvenation may occur. In actual fact, many times I've been faced with a situation where somebody has been fasting and so on, and they've been told by all their well-meaning friends and relatives that you must go and have a blood test. You know, you're dying because you're suffering from this or that or something else. And I've said to them, go and have a blood test. I have no fear. And because every time the person has gone and had a blood test, it has been perfect.
Torej, katere spremembe v telesu lahko pričakujemo med postenjem? Ena izmed njih se zagotovo odraža po krvni sliki. V tem primeru se pač spremeni prostornina oziroma količina krvi in potem seveda to v razmerju glede na telesno velikost oziroma obseg telesa. Zdaj, nekateri ljudje bi potem radi delali krvne preiskave med postenjem. Nimam znanjega strahu pred tem, zato ker v bistvu kadarkoli so to naredili, so ugotovili, da je v bistvu njihova krvna slika bila perfektna.
So that the decrease in blood volume only occurs when fasting is completed and starvation sets in. That's the only time. And usually, just to give you a general idea, if a person fasted for, say, 40 days and the body says it's time to stop, if they didn't break the fast then, it usually takes about 40 days before they die. It's simple as that.
Torej, pač znižanje krvi se pojavi zelo takrat po zaključju, oziroma kadar se začne stradanje in v tem primeru lahko pričakujemo pač naš namen. In običajno v bistvu traja kar nekaj časa naprej, da še da nekaj resno zatepa.
Skin. If you have many skin blemishes, then they'll certainly clear up when you're fasting. They disappear so quickly because all the things that are causing the skin eruption, which are the toxic mace that you actually put into your body by not eating properly or whatever, is being eliminated through the skin eruptions. And they heal, and all the blemishes and blotches tend to appear and tend to disappear. Just to give you a little bit of a further insight into how the body works, that excess protein foods, including chocolate, cause the eruption of skin blemishes, and the first one that you see in the first stages of toxemia the pimples. And then, when you ignore the pimple and you continue, then you can expect to get a boil. And then, if you ignore it, you just have the boil lanced or something like that, take some antibiotics, the next thing that will occur is you get a carbuncle, which is a multiple-headed boil. And then if you have that suppressed in some way or you ignore it in any way, then the next thing is ulceration. Now, I was talking to a man this afternoon and just explained to them about ulceration. I think there's a photograph on the end here about this, but I'll tell you about it now. This man was a musician and he was in the Townsville-based hospital and he had a big ulcer on his leg there and you could observe the bone. That's how the ulcer deep it was. And they told him, nothing more we can do for you, we have to cut your leg off. Now, fortunately, he had other musician friends in Cairns who knew me. And so they went to him and they said, come and see John before you do anything else. So he came up to me within 1 week. That ulcer, it had healed to the point you couldn't see the bone anymore. Just in 1 week. So.
Torej, med postom se pač odražajo spremembe tudi na koži, tekstura kože se spremeni, pozdravijo se pač izbruhi na koži oziroma razna vnetja in razne nepravilnosti na koži, kot so mozolji in potem razne ta znamenja, podobne zadeve. Prekomerno vnašanje beljakovin oziroma prekomerno prisotnost beljakovin v vaši prehrani se takoj odraža na koži in ponavadi se začne to z kakšnimi izpuščaji oziroma mozolji in potem se lahko to stopnjuje do raznih stopenj. Na koncu potem sledijo vnetja oziroma pojavi se lahko tudi razjede oziroma čili in rad bi vam predstavil en primer moškega, ki je imel tako hudi primer, da mu v bistvu se že videla kost na nogi in pač zdravniki so v tem primeru svetovali temu gospodu, da pač morajo odrezati nogo, ker je bil primer tako resen. Ampak na srečo je ta gospod poznal nekaj glasbenike, ki so poznali mene in so mu rekli, naj me obišče. In v enem tednu v bistvu se več ni videla kost in se je začelo.
So, as far as the teeth is concerned, it's possible for recapping to occur on the teeth. Little as they might tell you, this is a possibility, and this quite often occurs during the fast, but it can occur outside of the fast if you're living the simple natural life that we are advocating. There's a tendency also for the rejection of the fillings. And the rejection occurs because the tooth is regenerated. The loose teeth that people have had in their mouth, they become firm again during this process. And with regard to fillings, what we advise is this, that if you lose a filling, or whatever, and there is no pain, then it is best to leave it like it is. Don't go and have another filling put in, because this usually is the process of regeneration. That if the nerve is exposed and it's giving you jip, as we say, it's very, very painful, then that's when you would go and have a filling. But outside of that, you wouldn't replace the filling. This also goes if you break a tooth. If there's no pain, leave it as it is. The body has the opportunity of regenerating. But if there is pain because of the exposure of the nerve, yes.
Okay. Drugo področje so ljudje. Lahko se zgodi, da se med postenjem zacelijo luknje. To se lahko sicer zgodi tudi izven postenja, če želite tak zdrav način, kot ga pač propagiramo. Potem med postenjem se lahko zgodi to, da telo zavrne zalivke oziroma jih izvrže, se pravi, izpadejo iz zob. V primeru, če izgubite zalivko oziroma se pojavi spet luknja, ni bolečine, potem svetujem, da pač pustite to luknjo, ker v tem primeru gre za zdravljenje. Če pa se zgodi, da je živec izpostavljen, in podobno velja, če si zlomite zob, v tem primeru pa je smiselno potem se odločiti za novo zalivko, sicer pa pustite.
There is another situation there, it's gone from my mind, we're talking about something else, okay? The hair becomes softer. This is always occurs. And in some instances, there's a possibility for the restoration of the natural colour of the hair. People whose hair has gone quite grey can become back to its natural colour. There's also a possibility of where people, and I've seen this happen many, many times, so it's not just a one-off thing. In actual fact, it happened in my youngest daughter, where you can lose practically all your hair. And this can be rather frightening to people. You think, oh, I'm losing my hair. Something must be dying for this to occur. But then the new hair grows, and the new hair is curly. I've never seen it be otherwise. It's always curly, even if the other hair before it was dead straight, like mine is.
Potem lasje postanejo med postenjem običajno mehkejši. Obstaja tudi možnost, da se vam povrne naravna barva, se pravi, če so ljudje osiveli, se lahko zgodi, da dobijo nazaj naravno barvo. V nekaterih primerih se pa lahko zgodi tudi to, da ljudje izgubijo lasje. To se je zgodilo moji mlajši hčerki, kar seveda deluje strašljivo, ker se ljudje tega prestrašijo. Ampak potem se pojavi to, da lasje na novo zrastejo in v tem primeru so vedno lasje podrasli. Se pravi, niso ravno opisani.
So, most people are afraid that they're going to lose their mind when they're fasting, whatever. But you see, in the spinal cord and nerves, there is little or no loss at all. The brain itself shows no loss at all in the period of fasting, and even when you move into the period of starvation, there is very little loss with regard to the brain. This is a story which has nothing to do with this in a way, but it's interesting. It's interesting in relation to medical tests. I had a friend of mine who had cancer, and they pushed themselves to the point where there's no chance of them recovering. And I helped them in the process of dying. They didn't want to go into a medical facility. And it was interesting because at 5 p.m. on that day that he died, I was sitting with him and we had an in-depth discussion of psychology and metaphysics and so on before he died around 6 p.m. Now, at the inquest, they said he died before 4:30 p.m.
Torej, povedal bom zanimivo zgodbo, ki nima sicer neposredne povezave z to temo. Prijatelj, ki je pač zbolel za rakom, te stopnje, da se je pač znašel v situaciji, ko je bilo jasno, da ni več vrnitve oziroma ni možnosti za ozdravitev, je potem v bistvu se znašel v tej situaciji, da sem se jaz odločil pomagati pri procesu umiranja. Ker pač ni želel tega doživljati v bolnišnici. In ob 5. smo imeli zelo globoke intelektualne debate, ob 6. je pa umrl. Pri tem so pa potem uradne osebe, ki pač napišejo mediški list, so napisali, da je umrl že ob 4:40.
In the kidneys, there's very insignificant loss, primarily due to the fat content. There's very little water content in the kidneys. So that's...
V povezavi z prejšnjim primerom je tudi to še zanimivo povedati, da v bistvu ni praktično nobene izgube v možganih, hrbtenjači oziroma živcih. Zelo majhna sprememba, ki je med postenjem, se pravi, ti obdržijo svojo strukturo in ni nobenih večjih sprememb. V primeru ledvic pa se tudi v bistvu zanemarljiva sprememba ledvic, tako da nekaj fazi.
And as far as the liver is concerned, the relative loss is due to, is relative to the rest of the body. The loss is attributed to the loss of glycogen and fat. Again, the liver doesn't have a very high fluid content.
Torej, v primeru jeter je ta izguba v relativni povezavi glede na preostanek telesa in ta izguba se v bistvu pripisuje izgubi glikogena in maščob, kajti za jetra pač velja, da nimajo visokega deleža vode.
And the weight of the lungs is usually relative and equal to that of the entire body. As you lose it, it's relative. And tuberculosis is greatly benefited by short periods of fasting, and long periods of fasting are contraindicated. And so that a person who has TB should definitely change their lifestyle to begin with, and then only fast for relatively short periods, perhaps a maximum of 3 to 5 days.
Torej, tudi izguba teže v primeru pljuč je v bistvu precej relativna in je pač povezana z izgubo teže celotnega telesa. V primeru tuberkuloze je zelo koristno krajše postenje, to se pravi 3 do 5 dni. Daljša postenja so kontraindikativna, tako da za osebe, ki pač se soočajo s tuberkulozo, svetujemo, da se vrnejo k naravnemu načinu življenja in mogoče pomagajo s krajšim postenjem.
The muscles lose 30 to 40% of their weight, and the heart muscle only loses 3%. Of course, in the muscles you have quite a bit of fluid, but you also have mainly fat and glycogen.
Torej, te skeletne mišice izgubijo od 30 do 40% njihove teže, medtem ko pa srčna mišica v bistvu izgubi manj kot 3% teže.
The spleen loses 50 to 60% of its weight, and the loss is chiefly water. And of course, this is very helpful to people who are diabetic.
Vranica izgubi 50 do 60% svoje teže in ta teža je v bistvu večinoma voda.
Along with the pancreas, as you see, it becomes small and firm, and diabetics have greatly benefited from that. The extreme care is both required by the professional and the patient, and requiring continual monitoring and close observation of diabetics. Diabetics are relatively easy, you might say, it's relatively easy to help them get off their insulin or whatever other form of medication they're taking. But you have to be very, very careful in this process. I've dealt with people that have been insulin dependent up to 35 years and been able to again become free of taking insulin.
Trebušna slinavka.
Trebušna slinavka postane majhna in trdnejša in to v bistvu je zelo koristno za ljudi, ki imajo probleme z diabetesom. In pač ekstremna pozornost oziroma skrba je potrebna oziroma skrbno in redno nadzorovanje v primeru tako strani tistega, ki skrbi za pacijente in strani pacijenta in skrbno opazovanje.
The stomach. Well, they say the way to a good man's heart is through his stomach. So it's greatly rejuvenated. So I suggest that all you wives get your husbands to fast. And it really enables the resumption of normal functioning, and collapsed stomachs shrink and tend to return to normal size. This goes for other prolapsed organs as well. And ulcers, stomach ulcers heal, and gastric catarrh is eliminated and appetite returns to normal. You find that when you've been fasting, that if you will be careful and not overeat, the amount that you need will be far less than what it was before, because your ability to absorb and metabolize the food will be greatly increased.
Želodec se v bistvu zelo pomladi in pač postenje normalno funkcioniranje želodca, raztegne želodec se v bistvu skrči oziroma se vede na normalno velikost, pozdravijo se razjede, v bistvu se vse normalizira.
So, what changes go on in the chemistry of the body during this process? It does not lose the inorganic constituents, that's the minerals, which are very important in our bodily function. It doesn't lose them as rapidly as it had previously, and it doesn't lose the fats, the carbohydrates and proteins. And the more valuable the material, the less of it is lost. Remembering that, the kidneys play a major part in this, that they choose what to throw out and what to keep.
Skratka, razlika v kemiji telesni, telo ne izgublja tako hitro neorganskih gradnikov, kot so minerali, oziroma v enakem razmerju, oziroma tako hitro, kot izgublja organske gradnike, to se pravi maščobe, ogljikove hidrate in beljakovine. Se pravi, bolj kot je dragocen ta material oziroma ti gradniki, manjša je njihova izguba.
So, as well as all of this going on and all these organs getting smaller and losing this and losing that, we can observe the repair of the organs and the tissue, and that occurs more rapidly. The brain and bones can actually grow, and broken bones heal in half or even less than occurs outside the fast. And as I mentioned yesterday, if a person will follow the instructions, which include fasting, if they have a broken bone that I set down for them, then I would be willing to give them a written guarantee that it will be healed in half the normal time. A normal bone in an arm and such like takes 6 to 7 weeks. It'll be healed in 3 to 4. In a leg, 12 weeks. It'll be healed in 6 to 7. So.
Torej, popravila organov in tkiv, vse te pozitivne spremembe oziroma zdravljenje se lahko zgodi precej hitreje. V primeru zlomljenih kosti, običajno, tako kot sem vam včeraj povedal, se lahko ta čas razpolovi ali še celo hitreje pospeši ta proces, za kar vam lahko dam pisno garancijo, če boste sledili vsem navodilom. Tako da v primeru recimo zlomljenja kosti na nogi običajno traja pač to zaceljenje 12 tednov, v primeru pa če to izvajate v postenju, pa se lahko to zgodi tudi v 6-7 tednih.
I think it's important that I also mention that we do not use casts when we are working with broken bones, because you don't allow the exposure of that area to the sunlight, and you don't allow it to be massaged. And that is also one of the prime factors that helps in the healing. Is being able to work with the broken area and work on it. Whereas when it's encased in a cast, you can't get at it. There's no way. So if you're ever in that position and you can get them to do so, then a half cast, and so you can take it out of the cast and you can have it massaged, you can put it in the sunlight and so on.
Moram tukaj tudi povedati, da mi v primeru zlomljenih kosti ne uporabljamo gipsa oziroma malca, zato ker v tem primeru potem tudi ni stika z soncem in pa ne moremo izvajati masaž, ki so zelo koristne v primeru zdravljenja, zato ker pač je to v skladu s filozofijo, da tkivo se potem tudi uporablja oziroma pač je uporabi. Oziroma, če že, potem imamo ta mavec, ki se ga da tudi sneti, da se pač lahko potem to tkivo tudi uporablja oziroma izpostavi sonce.
Insulin. The person who is insulin dependent, the insulin levels required decreases, and there's an increase in insulin sensitivity, so that you have to be careful that you don't put a person into insulin coma. And the insulin, of course, is very important in the storage of food calories in the body. But even if your pancreas, as I said, has appeared to have not been functioning for many, many years, there is a possibility of you able to regenerate it and overcome your insulin dependence.
Torej, v primeru, ko imajo osebe težavo z inzulinom, se pač med postenjem zgodi tudi, da se zniža nivo inzulina, ampak hkrati se pa poveča tudi občutljivost oziroma senzibilnost ta inzulinska, če morate biti zelo previdni, ker lahko v tem primeru osebo spravite tudi v komo. Ampak med postenjem se pogosto zgodi, da v bistvu trebušna slinovka, ki je imela prej težave z delovanjem, v bistvu čisto pomladi oziroma odgradi in se v bistvu stanje povsem izboljša, tako da v bistvu ni treba težav stanje obravnavati s pomočjo pomočka oziroma odgradi.
So, glycogen, of course, is very important in burning of fat in our body, and it increases the glycogen levels. How are we going for time, all right?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay. Torej, tudi glede glikogena se stanje izboljša, se pravi, nivo glikogena se običajno zviša.
So, increases in hepatocrine and norepinephrine levels. Now, what am I talking about here? Cortisone. You see, your adrenal glands, which are above your kidneys, they excrete cortisone. And natural cortisone is entirely different from the synthetic, which you're given through the medical system. And it increases the ability to function and your ability to to your ability to live, virtually. So what are those hormones? What is cortisone for? It's a fight or flight hormone. You may have heard about the little old lady who lifted the bus off the person who was run over by the bus. She was activating her adrenal glands at that moment. She would never be able to do it since, if you asked her to do it, or before if you'd asked her to do it. But at that moment, she activated her adrenal glands and was able to do it. And we can do that too. But every time you do it, you destroy your life by X amount. I'm not sure how much, but so don't activate your adrenal glands too often. They're not there for that.
Torej tudi v primeru hormonov, kot sta epinefrin in norepinefrin, se v bistvu zviša nivo teh dveh hormonov. Tukaj govorimo o adrenalnih žlezah, oziroma govorimo o kortizonu, ki pač, oziroma ti hormoni se imenujejo tudi borbeni oziroma letalski hormon. To je povezano z znano zgodbo stare gospe, ki je zmogla dvigniti avtobus, in to je ravno naredila zaradi tega, ker se je pač sprožil ta hormon. In tudi vsak izmed nas je v bistvu sposoben dvigniti avtobus, ampak velja, da pri tem si potem tudi skrajšujemo življenje za pač nedoločen faktor, tako da tega raje ne počnite.
So, it increases the growth hormone levels and increases them by nearly 6-fold. You know the growth hormone levels? Yes. And there's, I think we'll just about come to it if we have enough time, but the University of Southern California, this was in last year, they have shown how by fasting, even just for a short period of time, you increase the growth level of hormones. And you also, I'll leave that.
Se pravi, tudi glede rastnega hormona lahko opazimo spremembe, se pravi, ta hormon se do 6-krat poveča po kratkem testenju. To so nedavne raziskave iz prejšnjega leta objavljene strani Univerze v Južni Kaliforniji.
So when should we fast? When we're actually ill, whenever the temperature rises 1 degree above the normal of 37 degrees, whenever there's a loss of hunger, or there is trauma or an accident. You know, if you've ever experienced a major accident, you immediately lose your hunger. If you're in trauma, it can be psychological trauma, then you lose your hunger. That is not.
Torej, kdaj se naj sploh postimo? Postili bi se naj v primeru akutne bolezni, kadarkoli nam naraste temperatura, več kot normalne temperature, to se pravi, to je 37 stopinj, se pravi, ko je pač ta temperatura zvišana za 1 ali več stopinj, se pravi, ko imamo vročino z drugimi besedami, kadar se zgodi izguba apetita oziroma lakote, pa kadar se pojavi travma oziroma kadar pač imamo kakšno nesrečo, tudi v tem primeru običajno izgubimo apetit.
And it's important to realize the loss of hunger in trauma and accident are normal because the body wants that energy. As I said before, the hardest work you'll ever do is the digestion of food. But the body at that time needs that energy to deal with that trauma and that accident. It doesn't need to be digesting food. Realize at all times you have up to 3 days of food in your digestive tract. So you can live for 3 days without food with no problem at all. Just from that point of view.
Torej, izguba lakote se pojavi v primeru travme, zato ker pač, kot sem prej omenil, se gre v tem primeru za ohranjanje energije. Kot sem omenil, v bistvu prebava eno izmed najtežjih del, kadarkoli upravljate. In v primeru travme telo potrebuje vso energijo, da se v bistvu sooči s to travmo, da pač upravi s to situacijo. Velja pa tudi to, ne, da v katerem koli času imate povprečju vsaj za 3 dni količine hrane v prebavnem traktu, tako da skrbite.
So there you are. When should, or how long should we fast? Well, they're the classic signs. As I said, they're the classic signs, but there are other more subtle signs that you need to know about too, and you need to study up on it if you want to really put this into practice. So you understand it. So you can be in control. You need to take back your power. So, it looks as though we've run out of time, and I have to start asking questions or answering questions now. So, thank you very much for putting up with me for this part, and see where we go from here.
Okay, torej vprašanje je, kako dolgo bi se ne postili. Seveda obstajajo klasični znaki, kot je vrnitev lakote, potem čiščenje jezika, vrnitev pulsa. To so klasični znaki. Obstajajo pa še potem posebni znaki, za katere morate pač situacijo malo bolj podrobno študirati oziroma se s tem ukvarjati. In ker smo v bistvu izkoristili čas, ki je namenjen predavanju, se pa zdaj selimo na drugi del, kjer pa dobite priložnost vi za vaše vprašanje.
John, thank you very much for your precious and very useful lecture. I think everybody here is well satisfied. So, predlagam ten aplaus, ker vprašanja, odgovori imamo časa, koliko je ura? 20 do 5, se pravi 25 minut, 20 minut, 25 minut imamo časa. Potem sledi drugi dogodek, tukaj moramo pač zaosprazniti prostor, pa bi zdaj kar zastavili vprašanja, pa sledi odgovori, tako da, pa prispevke bi prosili, seveda, ker moramo pač pokriti stroške, Simona bo dala tistore košarce naprej, potem pa pač bomo zaključili vse odravni.
Vprašanje lahko tudi kakšne druge teme, tako da ni vrti.
No, v glavnem pa predvsem glede zdravja pa posta, ker verjamem, da je veliko vprašanj prav okrog tega.
How about children and fasting?
Children fast so easily.
Really?
Yes. The biggest problem is the parent.
Okay.
Vprašanje je bilo, kako je z otroci in postenjem, pa rekel, otroci se postijo brez težav, lahko postijo težave običajno za starše.
You know, it's so much easier for us to fast than to watch our children fast, because we have all this fear that they might die. And they only fast for a very short time. When, you know, if they had all these things that they give them in vaccinations for, I've actually had the opportunity of watching children go through the reliving of these conditions when they were fasting after they'd been vaccinated. I'll tell you a lot more.
Okay. Torej, veliko lažje je postiti samega sebe, kot pogledati naše otroke, da se postijo, ker v tem primeru se lahko pojavi strah, da lahko umrejo. Ampak v primeru otrok gre običajno za krajše postenje in to se pojavlja dosti krat, kar da se recimo biti cepljeni, da se pozdravijo in povedal vam zdaj več o teh primerih.
In the instances that I'm speaking of, the children actually, at a particular time of the day, usually they went through, say, measles for an hour. And then they'd have a break, and then they'd go through the mumps for an hour. And then they'd go through the chickenpox for an hour. And then it was all gone, because that was the vaccinations they'd had.
Okay. Zdaj, v teh primerih se lahko zgodi, da se v eni uri pojavijo simptomi ošpice, potem se lahko pojavi norice, pa še tretja bolezen see the third disease. What is the name of the third disease?
There's measles, mumps and chickenpox.
Ja, torej se pravi, vsi ti simptomi se lahko pojavijo razliko treh uri.
It might be interesting to know that really chickenpox is only a minor form of smallpox.
Zanimivo je vedeti, da je mumps samo posebna oblika
norice so manjša oblika
as we get more toxic, so that the worst condition appears.
Bolj kot smo toksični, več kot je strupa v telesu, pač hujše svetanske sprave.
Thank you.
More questions?
What's your opinion on that inner dimension of fasting more than achieving just
Lahko večkrat bo na glas, ker to vam tudi večkrat slab slišne na pol.
not just achieving health for the body, but also inner experience, because mine was that that electromagnetic field was getting stronger from hands, from body when I was fasting, and when is that line to know where to stop? Because when I went over the first rise of hunger, it passed, and that sensitivity and this field, maybe aura is called, or vibration, was getting stronger, and I quite enjoyed it. So what's your opinion on that?
Okay, so he's asking what about inner dimension, in the sense that when he was fasting, he has sensed some increase in electromagnetic field, or people call this aura, and he was feeling quite good after the first hunger.
Yes, and this
How to approach all these signs, and this is important.
How to approach all the signs as to when the crisis is.
Yes, and how is this related to this electromagnetic field? Or should it be called aura, or
increased prana or something?
so he's speaking about actually he says that he had some sensations that he's describing as electromagnetic field in the body, and he's suggesting that some people call this aura or prana. Or
So what would I think?
Yes, when to stop?
When to stop?
When to stop?
Yes.
Well, again, if I was observing you, you were under my care, then I would be asking you, when you say about the electromagnetic field that you experience, how can you tell me more about?
Yes, tension from my palms was getting, I felt the tension like it's spreading around, and heat inside here.
Yes.
And it was like expanding and like vibrating, then it went to all the body, like vibrating from all around. I enjoyed it, and the harder it was, that stronger was that sensation, and when to find that line, when to stop fasting, when to break the fast.
I think I'm understanding you. Please speak a little. So that, but you didn't feel hungry, or
no? It became even stronger after the first crisis. I went over, but the second it was fear coming in, and I stopped.
The hunger became stronger.
Yes. No, I passed it for a few days more, but when it became too strong, it was a fear, and I stopped.
When this feeling became too strong?
Not feeling hunger, feeling I enjoyed. I enjoyed that feeling.
I think I'm not sure I'm understanding all this, but so that he is saying when the hunger, he had the hunger.
So, yeah, he's saying that
He had no trouble with hunger. He had no trouble with hunger.
For the first time, yes.
For the first time, he was fasting. He had no trouble with hunger. He passed it.
And the vibration got stronger.
And which got stronger?
Vibration.
Oh, the vibration. Oh.
Yes.
Oh, don't worry about it.
And he stopped fasting when the fear comes.
Fear for hunger and
Yes, the fear.
Yes, the fear, not the hunger.
you know, legs became weaker and it was harder to stand and I was still working and then spirit came in.
And you see, I would have to understand all of it, I would have to sit down with you and go through your whole life and see, because what you were experiencing was the elimination of certain poisons from your body, and that was how it was affecting you. And it wasn't time to break the fast, but except the fear, you see.
Yes.
And you had fear, so you have to break the fast.
Yes, and it became stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, skratka, vprašanje je bilo v povezavi z nekimi... Mogoče najboljše, če ti razložiš vprašanje?
Še boljše.
Ne,
Slovensko.
Jaz sem sprašal gospoda o postu pa o teh notranjih dimenzijah, ko se spustiš v sebe, pa pridejo čustva, bolj spiritualna dimenzija. In sem čutil kukor povečano auro, to elektromagnetno polje, ko sem se pustil, kako bi rekel to, povečano pranovsko zlani, večjo vibracijo, ne? In ko je nastopila lakota in sem šel prvič čez to, se je to še povečalo. In potem sem ga sprašal, kje zdaj najdete mejo med tem strahom pred lakoto, pa kdaj iti čez, pa nehat, ker se je v bistvu ta energija širila, pol, ko sem to ta drugič šel čez. Ne?
A ti si imel strah pred lakoto, strah pred tem, da...
Ne, zaradi lakote, pa zaradi šmohote je prišel strah in avtomatsko lakota.
Aha, razumem, in je popustil tiste efekt, v bistvu, ki te je predal.
Ja, močnejša je bila lakota, efekt je še vedno bil, ampak lakota je bila premočna in sem se to strašil. In prav, da v bistvu te težke noge, pa te stvari, ki so prišle, v bistvu so bili to simptomi čiščenja telesa, in da še v bistvu ne bo treba nekaj.
Ja, in je rekel, da se ne rabiš tega ustrašiti, kot sem
Tako pa v bistvu, da bi šel skozi celotni proces mojo zgodbo življenja, da bi mu povedal, kaj vse sem mu našel, da bi on videl, pa mi bolj natančno odgovoril, kaj bi tole obnovno predvideva, da to.
Da si se ustrašil svoje lastne energije. In je lahko tudi samo zavajajoč, da te pritigne kao, da te strah lakote.
Ti si takrat delo, ne?
Ja, ampak imam sedeče delo, ne? Z računalnikom, tako da ni nekaj tako napora, tako dosta umirjeno bilo vse skupaj, ampak še vedno ti shodati iz avtobusa, ne, so bile noge težke, pa po stopnicah dol,
se malo tresne. Ja, da počivaš takrat, pa ležiš v posli.
Yes. Okay. There's two things I'd like to say. One is, you were working.
We were just speaking about that he had to stay at home in bed, not working.
Yes. If he was working, then this can be excessive use of energy. But if you're normally, it would be just elimination of poison, because you are increasing the poison level of your body by working. The byproducts of metabolism, as you're activating your... But I'd like to tell you about one person, just to give you an idea of the different extremes the body goes to in its healing process. This was a lady who had been given shock treatment. You know shock treatment?
Yeah.
When she was around 20 years of age.
Okay, torej, nepostenje ne bi smeli upravljati dela, zato ker na ta način povečujemo zastrupljenost v telesu, ker se v bistvu pač energija, ki bi bila potrebna za post, tudi v smer in drugo smer. Zdaj bom povedal dva primera. Eden je o 20-letni ženski, ki je skozi šok terapijo.
The whole of the story, to give you a little bit more background on it, was that it appears that she was forced into a marriage with a man much older than herself, against her will. Her parents wouldn't allow her to marry the young man that she was in love with. And she had lived her life with this man, and virtually, she said to me, she hated him, and she'd had children by him. and she became very ill in her 50s, and her late 50s, and her daughter brought her to me, and within 3 days of her arriving, she went into a coma. And she was in this coma for 23 out of 24 hours of every day for the next 36 days. And then, when she woke up in that 1 hour, she didn't know where she was, but she was all right. Nothing to worry about. Everything was fine. And then, on the 36th day, she awoke from the coma completely. But she didn't know where she was. She didn't know me. I had to ring her daughter and get her to come and introduce us. And then we had to teach her to walk again, around the bed, around the room, around the building, and then further. And so it went on. But this is giving you an idea of what, or the extreme that the body needs to go to repair damage when it's occurred. It was damaging the brain cells. You know, if you know anything about shock treatment, there's a big percentage of people, 10% of the people die from it overall. It bounces the brain around inside the skull. It's a wonder that all don't die from it. But it's an horrific form of treatment.
Torej, zgodba je o eni ženski, ki je bila prisiljena v poroko pri svojih 20 letih s starejšim moškim. Strani staršev pač je bila prisiljena, ona se je želela poročiti z eno drugo osebo, katero je ljubila. In pač s to osebo, s katero je bila prisiljena poroko, je imela tudi otroke in pač po njenih besedah je v bistvu sovražila to situacijo. In potem v 50 letih je zelo zbolela. Njena hčerka je pripeljala k njemu in po 3 dneh je padla v komo, ki je trajala 37 dni. Potem se je zbudila iz kome in ni vedela najprej, kje je, potem je kmalu prišla naslednji dan po sebi. Ampak ni vedela, kdo je, ni prepoznala Johna in ostalih in so morali tudi učiti ponovno hoditi. In to so lahko recimo ekstremi, ki se zgodijo v takih situacijah, kot je bila ta šok terapija, za katero velja, da 10% ljudi umre, ker v tem primeru se pač uniči določen del možganskih celic in to je pač ta situacija. Kakšno vprašanje?
What about colonic hydrotherapy?
What about colonic hydrotherapy? Colonics.
Yes, colonics. Which way does your body work?
Good question. Through the mouth, out, down.
Which way does your body work?
Torej, v kateri smeri deluje vaše telo, in govor spremstva je bilo zgoraj na to.
I've not seen the man. What?
Yes.
Okay.
From up down, yes.
Which way does the colonic work?
From bottom to...
This way.
Yes.
And the peristaltic action starts in the mouth.
Vprašanje je bilo, kaj pa z temi kolonoterapijami in Johnovo vprašanje nazaj je bilo, v kateri smeri deluje vaše telo. Peristaltika se namreč začenja v ustih in v bistvu deluje v tej smeri navzdol, medtem ko pa te kolonohidroterapije delujejo.
No, from bottom, to sem jaz mislila, ja. No, ja, sem prehitro rekla.
When you use the colonic, you reduce the bacterial flora in the bowel.
Kadar uporabljate kolonike, v bistvu uničujete oziroma izsušite telesno oziroma bakterijsko floro v vašem črevesju.
So you reduce the body's ability to function.
Torej, v bistvu uničujete oziroma znižujete zmožnost telesa, da pač funkcionira.
And you don't reduce the problem.
Ampak ne znižujete pa problema oziroma ne odpravite problem.
You're treating the effect and not removing the cause.
Skratka, odpravljate simptoma, ampak ne odpravljate pa vzroka.
The cause is what goes in here and here.
Vzrok je, kar gre tukaj noter.
Not what goes in there.
Ne, kar gre tam noter.
Can I continue this question? I have a replica to you. What about people who eat wrong, not healthy foods? For example, 50 years or 40 years, to be real. They are toxifying their body all the time. And they toxified their guts all the time. And many of them has a strong and real problems with digestion, with toxification of tissues. In this case, do you advise to go to colonic hydrotherapy or maybe to help cleaning the guts and cleaning the organism, or even in this case you
At no stage, what you have to do, the same as everything else, is you have to change your habits.
Yeah.
And then you put what you put in your mouth, it starts here, with what you're putting in your mouth and in your mind, and then you see your body works this way, and you're starting the cleansing and the healing from here, not from here. Because that's the way the body works.
What about fasting with tea? Fasting with tea instead of water.
Fasting with
Tea.
No, that's not fasting.
No,
No.
it is not.
No,
I think instead of water.
but it's not fasting.
Mogoče včeraj, kakšni niste zasledili, ampak to je meni ful zanimivo. John je včeraj izključno povedal, da edino, a pa in smo se danes pogovarjali, edina voda je tista, ki gre skozi telo, brez da bi prebava naša bila obremenjena. In to je v bistvu edini pravi post. Zato, ker vsaka druga snov zahteva aktivnost naše prebave.
Let's deal with the tea, if you like, just for Is the tea a living food?
No, it's not.
No. So you're putting something into yourself which is not living. So you have to pay the penalty. It won't help you get well, will it?
I understand, yes. Thank you.
Torej, vprašanje je bilo, kaj pa v primeru, ko ljudje živijo, 40-50 let, nezdrav življenjski stil, pa se prehranjujejo na napačen način in na ta način zelo zastrupljajo telo, če bi v tem primeru bilo vseeno smiselno uporabljati te kolonike in pestile. Žal odgovor je bil ne, v nobenem primeru v bistvu vedno je potrebno spremeniti navade in te navade so pač povezane tukaj, ne spodaj. Potem nadaljne vprašanje pa bilo glede čaja, če bi se recimo postili z čajem na mesto z vodo, pa smo potem dobili že ta odgovor, ne, da v bistvu edino voda ne povzroča dodatne prebave in dodatni odgovor je pa bil v bistvu, da glede čaja nasploh, ne, v bistvu to ni živa hrana. Ne.
To je mrtva vsak, ker je posušena, v bistvu ni več zelišča se suha stvar. Ne. Če sem ga jaz prav razumela, je v bistvu to, ne glede kolonika pa klastiranja. Telo je sposobno samo zdravljenja, tudi samo čiščenje zapacanega črevesja, če spremeniš navade prehranjevalne v glavi in prehranjevalne.
So she's just checking whether she understood you correctly. So the body is capable of cleaning the
Self-cleaning.
The body is capable of anything, almost.
What about constipation?
Constipation is very easy, usually. It's overeating.
Torej, zaprtje je v bistvu zelo enostavno rešiti, ker je običajno povezano z prenajedanjem.
Which is, when we say overeating, I'm not just saying too much food. I'm saying wrong food. That is overeating.
Torej, ko govorimo o prenajevanju, v bistvu ne govorim samo o napačni prehrani, oziroma samo o preveliki količini hrane, ampak tudi o napačni prehrani.
There are a lot of people who live this way, who suffer from constipation. Because they overeat. And when they stop overeating, the constipation goes away.
And they don't eat live food.
Oh no, this is just eating live foods.
No.
Yes.
The people who don't eat live food, they have problems.
Yeah.
Yes.
Torej, glede zaprtja, je v bistvu zelo enostavno, ker je povezano z prenajedanjem, ampak povedajo tudi, da ljudje, ki živijo tak zdrav način, lahko tudi doživljajo zaprtje, zato ker pač se prenajedajo. Tudi če jejo recimo presno in vse ostalo. And so, how much and how often should one eat? Like, generally, how much and how often should one eat? How much, the quantity of food, and the periods, or how often?
Yes. Twice a day.
Okay.
Yeah. Maximum. I think I gave the figures the other day. You see, you cannot say for an individual how much, because it varies from individual to individual, from day to day, and moment to moment.
Torej, glede kolikokrat na dan bi naj jedli, pravi največ 2-krat na dan, pa pravi glede količine, pa ne moreš dati nekih. Ker je relativno, ker je odvisno od osebe.
We have to learn to listen to our body, and what can be too much today might not be enough tomorrow.
Torej, moramo se naučiti poslušati telo, in kar je lahko preveč danes, je lahko premalo jutri.
So other thoughts, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yes. Did she get home?
Aha, sem že dobila odgovor. Sem tudi hotela o klisterju vprašati.
Pri običajnem postu je predviden uvod v post in zaključek posta za prilagajanje hrane. Ali tudi pri tem postu isto, ker ljudje jejo kuhano hrano, sprav procesirano, in potem naredijo čiščenje post in potem se vrnejo nazaj. In v tem primeru je predviden nek prehod z te hrane na navadno nazaj. Kako je pri vas? Ali se ostane na tej hrani ali...
So, usually, here is people advise that if you do fasting, like a time fasting, that you should have a special preparation period going from the cooked food to the raw food before the fast, and then they do fasting, and after fast, they again, for some period they eat the raw food, but then they go back. So, what is your advice, or what is your procedure? Should they stay in the raw foods, or is there any preparation period?
How do you break the fast?
So these people, we're talking about a group of people?
Yeah, like a common procedure here in Slovenia. What is a common advice here? That people usually don't eat raw food, and they do a fast, and then they go back to not cooked food.
If you keep on putting your finger in the fire, you're going to get a burn. Simple as that. You're not going to get better. Fasting is not a cure-all.
Okay. Torej, a vprašanje smo slišali, ne? Pravi pa, da je v bistvu zelo enostavno, če dajete prst v peč, se boste pač ožgali. Da je tako preprosto.
So you recommending fasting without prehoda, kako bi rekla, veš?
So you prevent fasting without any intermediate step like preparation?
You should always prepare, but that preparation would be no different than if you weren't going to fast. And then when the time comes, you fast. And then afterwards, you continue on, and you might have to fast 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times before you are really well. Each time you will become better. Because, okay, how old are you? 45? I don't know. But you're not going to undo 45 years in 45 minutes.
Yes, understand.
Torej, če lahko samo prevedem. V bistvu, ko se pojavijo znaki zapustenja, se pustite, ne glede na to, ali ste imeli prej pripravljeno dobo oziroma prehodno obdobje, ko ste sklenili prehrano, kar je seveda priporočljivo, da se pripravite. Ampak če se pokažejo znaki zapustenja, pač se pustite, če se ide tem biološkim principom, če poslušate svoje telo. In morate se pač tudi zavedati, da včasih traja mogoče, da se morate 4 oziroma 5-krat pustiti, preden se boste res dobro počutili, zato ker s 45 let, recimo ne preveč zdravih navad, ne morate 45 minut popraviti.
It's an ever ongoing process for the rest of your life.
V bistvu je vedno trajajoč in ponavljajoč se proces skozi vso vaše življenje.
Because once you healed all your problems,
vi morali pozdraviti vaše lastne probleme.
Then you start on your ancestors' problems.
Potem začnete z vašimi predniki.
Last question.
Jaz imam še eno vprašanje.
Pa tukaj še eno.
Zelo konkretni bote.
Okay, last 3 questions.
Vi ste že vprašali.
Okay, let's do last 3 questions. But there will be opportunities also afterwards. I think you will maybe be outside.
Mene zanima, kaj bi lahko morda svetoval glede slabokrvnosti. Večkrat ljudje sprašujejo, ko imajo nizko železo, ali pa mame pišejo na forume, otroci imajo nizko železo. Kaj bi svetoval, rečemo, kakšno dieto? Ali kako s tem problemom ravnajo? Ne, da ti vedno svetujejo, da je meso.
She's asking about problems with blood and because usually people on forums, they say that people should eat meat. And so what would you say with that blood?
So she's having problems with the blood.
Yes, and blood composition like people usually advise that people should eat meat.
Yes.
How to cure this?
Yes, you can overcome the blood problem with eating green leafy foods, and if it's really bad, then we would suggest that you drink green juice.
Right.
And that will bring it up very quickly, without having to eat them.
But you mean organic water from the plant, like squeezed out, not a mixer?
Better to use the type that squeezes it.
They squeeze it.
Yes.
Okay.
Than the central squeeze.
All right.
Torej, vprašanje je bilo, kaj pa povezavi z slabo krvnostjo, ker običajno se na teh forumih pojavljajo na sveti, da naj ljudje jedo meso.
Se je bil v slovenščini.
A, bil v slovenščini?
Ja, ti samo odgovor, vprašanje je bilo, samo odgovor.
Ok, vprašanje je bilo, sem si dobro zapomnil, ne?
Ja.
Njegov odgovor je pa bil, da v tem primeru je smiselno pač jesti zeleno listno zelenjavo in v tem primeru se to potem običajno zelo hitro in pozitivno odrazi, če pa gre res za velike težave, pa priporoča zelene sokove, se pravi, se stisnejo pač.
Sočivi sočenje.
Ja. Ok, predzadno.
How is your experience with short-term and regular posting? And which frequency do you prefer?
What is your experience with regular fasting or longer fasting?
Short-term.
Well, short-term fasting, and what kind of frequency do you recommend?
My recommendation really is to eat 2 meals a day. And then you have 18 hours of fasting every day, and you don't need to fast except when you're body.
Torej, moje priporočilo je, da jeste dvakrat na dan, to pomeni, da boste imeli 18 ur postenja in na ta način v bistvu se ne boste rabili postiti v krajši čas, ampak zgolj takrat, ko bo telo res porožilo znake, da se mora postiti. And this eating starts at which time? This, when do you start eating?
Midday, and you eat your last meal before 6 p.m.
Okay, torej, začnemo jesti ob sredi dneva, ob 12. in dva zadnji obrok pojemo pred 6. uro.
And when you get to the point where you are actually able to really observe your body, you will notice that when you get to about 12 hours, 14 hours, your body goes through a major change.
Torej, ko se boste naučili zares opazovati in poslušati vaše telo, boste videli, da se zgodijo velike spremembe po 12-14 urah tega postenja.
Because in the previous 12 to 14 hours, it's dealing with what we've done in the previous.
Zato, ker v tistih 12 urah se ukvarja s tem, kaj smo predtem počeli.
Kaj pa ta ideja, recimo, da brez klestirja, da noter po daljšem postu to v človesju, te strupi, jih telo samo absorbira, ker se pač prebava ustavlja? Brez klestirja?
He's asking if there is no enema, that some people say that there is so much toxins in the colon that body might absorb this and get fine.
Because digestion stops.
Because digestion stops.
If you are living as you should be living, your body will get rid of that. It will get rid of it, and you won't have any problems with it at all, overall.
But what if you don't live like you should?
You're going to have it still in there, and if you take it out, you're not going to get rid of the problem because you're not living as you should be living.
Vprašanje je bilo, kaj pa v primeru, če napravljamo tega klestiranja, se potem v črevesju zadržujejo ti strupi, ti odpadni materiali in se pač nekatere ljudje pač svarijo pri tem, da se tudi absorbira telo. John odgovor pa je, da če pravilno in zdravo živimo, bo v bistvu telo se znebilo teh strupov.
And this is not theory. This is practice. I've seen it happen many, many times where people eventually, when you start to get down to the itty-bitty or the bottom, you start passing blank feces.
Torej, to ni zgolj teorija, to je v bistvu moja praksa, ker ko se pač take stvari dogaja, potem sem videl, da so ljudje začeli izločati črne snovi.
Časoma, ne?
Časoma,
ja. Operirni prehrani, časi kot vam hrana.
Thank you for visiting Slovenia. I wish you come again next year. You can't promise, but we are very appreciated to be our guest here. So, rad bi se zahvalil še Matjažu za odličen prevod, pa za pomoč. Žal nas sledi dogodek in moramo sprazniti prostor, zato predlagam, kdo ima še kaj tasga, da je zaprašati Johna, da to pravimo zunaj, ker imamo tule.
Trenutno v temu predprostorčku se lahko tudi morda pa usedemo.
Lahko tule ali pa potem zunaj celo.
Zdaj bomo mi pomagali postaviti.
Hvala.